For some reason, people find a strange camaraderie in reviling something. But sadly, like a lot of jokes that get popular, they overstay their welcome and induce groans rather than laughs, and sometimes the focus on the negative aspects of something can be blinding to the positives. There are some games that I feel get hated on for unfair reasons, their flaws are blown out of proportion, or are just mocked to the point where the haters become more annoying than the issues they complain about. Now, if you happen to hate these games, great, you're not alone. These are just the games that I feel people should tone down the hatred of, mainly because it's just getting old. I like God of War, but I really can't stand how most beat-em-ups nowadays are automatically compared to God of War and considered mediocre clones of it. While that's true in some cases, God of War wasn't the first 3D hack and slash out there. I could call God of War a clone of Devil May Cry, which could be considered a clone of Dynasty Warriors, which could be considered a clone of okay, the point is, just because a game is in the same genre as God of War doesn't automatically make it a ripoff. Just look at Darksiders. Darksiders is similar to other popular games, so fanboy logic dictates it must be a crappy ripoff. Now, I'm not going to deny the similarities to God of War. You play as the war-based entity, collect souls from defeated enemies, featuring bloody conflict on a godlike level. And I did catch myself raising an eyebrow at the gun that opens blue and orange portals. But that doesn't make this game bad. The combat is pretty fun, the environments and characters are well designed, if a bit overblown, and the Zelda-y structure is done pretty well, and the boss fights are a heck of a lot of fun. It isn't perfect, some of the puzzles suck, blocking is useless, and the story isn't anything special. So yes, Darksiders is a ripoff, but it's a very entertaining ripoff. And that's good enough for me. E3 2008. It's Nintendo's turn in the spotlight. They poised for a big reveal on a game they've been hyping up for a long time.
So what could it be? A new Star Fox? Or maybe an F-Zero? Or maybe the long-awaited speculated Kid Icarus sequel?
You raised my hopes and dashed them quite expertly, sir. Bravo!
I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell.
Yeah, everyone was ticked off that Wii Music was the biggest game Nintendo had at E3. As such, it was reviled, hated, and regarded as the worst piece of casual crap known to man.
And you know what? I kinda had a lot of fun with it.
One thing we can all agree on is that it was marketed horribly. Trying to win over a bunch of musically illiterate and casual phobic gamers with air drumming and a horribly rehearsed Mario-themed performance was definitely a bad idea. Though the sheer vindictiveness of the gaming community was completely unwarranted. The minigames were actually a lot of fun, it encouraged musical experimentation, and yes, conducting a symphony, playing the Zelda overworld, and air guitaring Mute City was so worth $50. Though I will admit, this game does have flaws. For a game all about musical experimentation, I kinda wish it had a bigger track list and, well, songs worth experimenting with. Now, as a musician myself, I might be a bit biased when it comes to this game. But when I see professional gaming critics just flailing around, not keeping rhythm like the game told them to, and writing off the game as casual crap for not being able to win anything, I'm not surprised when they complain about the industry stagnating and not trying anything new. With Final Fantasy VII, you got two camps. On one side, you have the people who worship the game, call it the greatest thing ever made, and claim nothing can ever top it. Very untrue. On the other side, you have people calling it the most overrated game ever made, saying it single-handedly ruined Final Fantasy, and anyone who likes it is a closed-minded, pretentious tool desperately clinging to nostalgia.
Also untrue. And to my everlasting shame, I was in that camp once. I'm in the camp that just thinks the game is okay.
The graphics look horribly dated along with some of the dialogue, but the battle system aged kinda well, and most of the characters were very enjoyable, up until Kingdom Hearts and Advent Children came along and Nemo'd everything up. Seriously, Cloud was actually a decent protagonist until fangirls decided they liked oh so tortured anorexic pretty boys. Sure, it's not my favorite Final Fantasy, my favorites are 4, 6, and 9, but let me make something very clear, guys. Hate bad games for being bad games. Don't hate them because they're popular or their fans are annoying. Oh, trust me, that's gonna come back later. Zero Wing is commonly listed as one of the worst games of all time. What did Zero Wing do to be considered among the worst ever? Apparently, just not shell out the cash for a translator. So let me get this straight. Bad English makes a bad game? Yeah, you see where I'm going with this. Sure, there was nothing spectacular about Zeroing. It was an inoffensive shooter, kind of on the easy side, and didn't really do anything new. But to rank it among games like Charlie's Angels, E.T., and Custer's Revenge just for some English is really unfair. If we did that for all games, that could apply to half the NES and SNES library. Does Metroid suck because of it? Does Shenmue suck because of it? Does Metal Gear suck because of it? Okay, bad example. In the first Metal Gear Solid game, we are thrown into this crazy story about nuclear terrorism starring a gruff, manly protagonist. Snake quickly became a favorite amongst the gaming community with his determination, his awesome personality, and his iconic gravelly voice. Metal Gear! So, what were people expecting in the second one? Well, definitely not Raiden and Rose's marital problems. This game is commonly referred to as the black sheep of the franchise, when it kinda deserves that, but not to the extreme it's gotten. Raiden was not a bad protagonist. He was different, but he wasn't bad. I just blame Rose. The core gameplay elements are still there. There are a lot of improvements made, allowing for more options for stealth, and there are a lot of great moments in the story, including one of the most thought-provoking conversations I've seen in a video game.
Why would you take away individual freedoms and censor the net?
Jack, don't be silly.
Don't you know that our plans have your interests, not ours, in mind?
Boy, this sounds very familiar. Sure, it wasn't as good as the first one. Yes, it had a lot of big flaws, but it's still a game worth your time and shouldn't be skipped over just because of a few problems, and it's different. I grew up with Pokemon. I have very fond memories of playing the games, watching the cartoons, collecting the cards. It's something special to me.
That being said, when someone like Bopple's Minion gives us some harsh criticism and has the nerve to attack one of my most cherished childhood memories, I can see where he comes from.
He backed up his opinions with good reason. He looked at the games with more of a technical standpoint rather than aesthetic, and he had some legitimate complaints. His opinion didn't change mine, however, and I'll still pop Pokemon Red in any day, and nothing he says will prevent me from enjoying it. Other people, who have been dubbed Gen 1ers by the internet, saw it fit to angrily attack the poor guy for daring to question Generation 1. To Gen 1ers, everything got progressively worse after Generation 1. So to them, what's logically the worst Pokemon game? Generation 5, of course! Gen 1ers attack the newer games for things that Pokemon has always been doing, which is incredibly unfair. There have always been Pokemon based off man-made products or waste. There have always been humanoids. There have always been Pokemon based off real-life animals. There have always been useless Pokemon that no one ever used. So why do people hate on the new games for stuff that Pokemon has always been doing? The core gameplay of Pokemon is still the same, just with a few bells and whistles added. If anything, things have been constantly improving, what with fixing balancing issues, adding depth to the combat, and larger, more expansive worlds to explore. And if any of you are worried about Generation 6, allow me to assuage your fears. There's a Cthulhu Pokemon. I don't care much for the Mass Effect games. I've gone on and on about hating the cover system as a gameplay mechanic, but there's still some things I really enjoy about the games. Story is interesting at points, some of the characters are likable, and I've always enjoyed morality systems, even some of the bad ones. It's not my thing, but I can really see why people like it. Which is why I think the hatred of Mass Effect 3 is completely unjustified. Yes, the ending was bad, I even took a shot at it in top 10 video game endings, watch that by the way, but people! Just because the final decision sucked doesn't mean the game as a whole was bad, like Assassin's Creed 3, which sucked on both accounts, but I digress. It was still the same Mass Effect you all know and love, just with a few improvements and touch-ups from the previous ones. Yeah, the ending is important, I made a whole countdown about it, watch that by the way, but I'm pretty sure you guys all had fun up until the end, right? A whole game isn't ruined just because of an ending. Whenever it comes to Dynasty Warriors, all it seems that people can see are problems. People hate the gameplay, people hate the voice acting and characters, and people hate the story. Especially that last one, considering the plot was leaked in the form of history books. Spoilers, Jin wins! The way I see it, if you're playing this game for the story, you're playing for the wrong reasons. People don't play Mario for the story, people don't play fighting games for the story, so why should we play a game designed with combat as the focus for the story? As for the gameplay being repetitive, I respectfully disagree. I will agree these games aren't as complex or as difficult as games like Devil May Cry, but what's wrong with just wanting to have fun cutting down hundreds of people with oversized and impractical weapons with particle effect maelstroms? The characters are not serious enough? It's called a camp atmosphere, and if that's not your thing, well, I don't know what to tell you. I can't take these games seriously either, and that's what I love about them. I love destroying everything in my path, all the while uttering the most hilarious dialogue this side of an Ed Wood film. It's an experience that shouldn't be discounted just because it's not as serious as God of War or Metal Gear Solid, as seriously as you can take either of those.
Your skills have improved, or rather, your hardware.
To say people are resistant to change is, oh screw it, the punchline is DMC Devil May Cry. Now before you jump on me and say this game is terrible when compared to the previous Devil May Cry games, I would reply, you're right. I don't think this game is as good as 3 or even 4, but I would make the argument it's better than 1 and 2, but that's just me. The game does have serious flaws. The writing is atrocious, it basically stole the characters and threw them into a cliche plot, and aside from that, it was a pretty good game. The gameplay was very fun, which was the most important thing, the environments and characters designs were pretty cool, and the dialogue did leave me in chuckles from time to time, if mostly for the wrong reasons.
You're an asshole!
I feel about this game the same way I do Kingdom Hearts 2 and Dynasty Warriors. Ignorable story and awesome gameplay. I would also put Other M on that list, but you can't skip the cutscenes and now I'm getting off topic. Bottom line, I can overlook the issues with the story and can just sit down and have a blast with the gameplay.
And if I'm having fun, isn't that really all that matters?
Nope.
The Lonely and Forgotten! I can't do it. I just can't do it. I know what's going to happen if I do. It's going to be overrated games all over again. People are just going to look at face value what I do, not listen to my reasons, and downvote it purely based off that. Why should I expect any different? Why should I do what I do when I know I'm just going to get hated on for what I like? What the heck am I saying? Screw what the haters think. This is my opinion and no one's gonna change it. You knew this was coming from the beginning. Bar none, the most overhated games of all time are the Call of Duty games. Now let me ask you something. If your initial reaction was to discredit me just because I said I liked Call of Duty, I implore you, please show a shred of human decency and hear me out. Because you're kind of reinforcing my point.
Call of Duty is the most reviled game series on the internet, and anyone who even utters a compliment to the series is automatically written off as not a real gamer. Example, when I said I liked Superman 64 in Top 10 Nostalgic Songs and a recent vlog, no one cared. I got some weird looks to be sure, but people knew that it was my opinion and they didn't get mad. But when I said I liked Call of Duty, suddenly people act like I've committed murder. One thing I've noticed is that most of the hatred isn't even directed at Call of Duty, more at the people who play it and the people who made it. Mostly these guys who I will never forgive for killing Guitar Hero and Prototype. Gamers claim to hate Activision and the indirect influence Call of Duty has had on the industry, what with the glut of scripted event FPSs nowadays. Look, it's not Call of Duty's fault that everyone wants to be it. That's on developers for trying to imitate Call of Duty and try to be as successful as it. EA. But if I'm going to be honest, the most common complaint I see is also the most valid. Call of Duty will get boring if released every year. Yes, that is true. But that isn't an excuse to go around and act like a psychopathic toddler. Go to Metacritic and take a look at the user reviews for Modern Warfare 2 and 3 and note how almost none of them actually list good reasons why they hate the game other than it sucks because it's Call of Duty. One person actually said Modern Warfare 3 is technically not a game because it has a linear structure and utilizes a lot of set pieces.
Ooh, utilizes a lot of set pieces, so it's not a game. Just like an on-rail shooter. So by that logic, all on-rail shooters are technically not games. Do you see the kind of warped logic that these haters use?
I know plenty of people have legitimate complaints about the franchise. I get it. It's not perfect. There are more games deserving of the praise it gets, and the fans can be obnoxious. But if the argument doesn't stem past because it's Call of Duty, I'm not going to take it seriously. I'm not going to pretend all these games are perfect. Modern Warfare 3 and the Black Ops games weren't exactly stellar in my eyes, but the hatred that Call of Duty gets seems to just be a knee-jerk reaction to how popular it is and people blaming it for the problems of this industry when you can't do that.
I'm the Fire Joker, and I am not ashamed to admit that I have fun with Call of Duty. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some campers to hunt down.
Thanks for asking. All things considered, I couldn't be better, I must say. I'm feeling super, no, nothing bugs me. Everything is super when you're, don't you think I look cute in this hat?